Hi, I'm Sticky. Isn't that the coolest name ever? You know what's even cooler? Sometimes you will notice. So on some of the videos, I have a different voice, a little bit of vocal magic, maybe. But sometimes I just record directly, super raw and real. So I really hope you still absolutely love the videos. And honestly, I hope it doesn't affect the content or the quality because we put so much heart and soul into it because it's all about keeping things fresh and authentic. What do you think? Why do men have nipples? It's a legitimately fascinating bit of biology, and the answer goes way back. Essentially, it boils down to early development. See, in the very, very early stages of embryonic development, all human embryos, male and female, start out looking basically identical. We all start with the same building blocks, and those building blocks include the beginnings of mammary glands and nipples. It's the default setting, you could say. It isn't until later, guided by hormones, that sex-specific development kicks in. In females, hormones like estrogen drive the full development of mammary glands, preparing them for breastfeeding. But in males, the hormone testosterone steps in and largely suppresses that development. The mammary tissue doesn't fully develop, but the nipples, well, they've already started forming, and there's really no evolutionary reason for the body to get rid of them. Think of it like a leftover architectural feature, like an appendix or wisdom teeth. They were useful to our ancestors at some point, but now they're just kind of there. All right. So to go a little deeper, it's not just about the early stages. There's also the question of evolutionary benefit. Now, male nipples themselves don't have a direct reproductive function. They don't produce milk. They aren't involved in feeding babies. But that doesn't mean they're completely useless. There's a theory, and it's still debated, that nipples can be erogenous zones for men, contributing to sexual pleasure and therefore potentially to reproductive success. It's a bit of a roundabout benefit, but it's a possibility. Basically, evolution doesn't always strive for perfection or efficiency. Sometimes things just stick around if they're not actively harmful. There's a concept in evolutionary biology called non-adaptive traits, which describes features that don't necessarily offer a benefit, but also don't cause a detriment. Male nipples could easily fall into that category. Now, the important part is these nipples do contain mammary tissue, and although small, they are capable of developing breast cancer. So it's important for men to be aware of any changes or abnormalities, just like women are. It's rare, but it can happen, and that's a good reason for them to be there for detection. Let's talk about the broader picture and look at some related animals. It's pretty consistent throughout mammals. Male animals in a lot of species have nipples, even if they don't serve any obvious function. It's because of that same shared embryonic development that we just talked about. It's a basic mammalian blueprint. Think about it. Cows, dogs, horses, even whales, most male mammals are born with nipples. Some species have had them lost over time due to evolutionary pressures, but the presence of nipples in males is the norm, not the exception. Now, this also brings up an interesting point. Sometimes, under certain hormonal imbalances or with specific medical conditions, men can actually lactate. It's rare, but it's been documented. High levels of prolactin, a hormone involved in milk production, can sometimes cause this to happen. So the potential for nipple function is there, even if it's usually suppressed. Shows the biological pathways are still present. So let's get a bit more specific about the hormones involved. The key players here are testosterone, estrogen, and prolactin. Testosterone, primarily in males, is responsible for the development of male secondary sexual characteristics, things like a deeper voice, increased muscle mass and facial hair. It also suppresses the development of mammary glands, but it doesn't completely erase the initial structures formed during embryonic development. Estrogen, on the other hand, is the primary female sex hormone and plays a crucial role in mammary gland development. Now, both males and females produce estrogen, but in vastly different quantities. In females, estrogen levels rise during puberty, triggering breast growth. In males, estrogen levels are kept relatively low. Then there's prolactin. This hormone is primarily known for its role in milk production in females after childbirth. However, prolactin is present in both sexes, and it can be stimulated by various factors, including stress, certain medications, and even nipple stimulation. In men, prolactin levels are normally kept in check by dopamine, a neurotransmitter that acts as a prolactin inhibitor. But if dopamine levels are reduced, or if there's some other disruption, prolactin levels can rise, potentially leading to lactation. So, delicate balance, really. Now, here's a fun fact. Some men who undergo certain medical treatments or have specific conditions affecting their hormone levels may experience something called gynecomastia, the enlargement of male breast tissue. This happens when there's an imbalance between testosterone and estrogen. So even though it isn't common, those structures are still active and capable of responding to hormonal changes. No, human males do not need nipples in the same way females do for breastfeeding. They aren't essential for reproduction or survival, but to push beyond that simple answer, it's not as straightforward as it seems. We already talked about the potential for sexual arousal, the remote possibility of lactation, and early detection of breast cancers. However, from a purely Darwinian perspective, if nipples in men were actively detrimental, if they caused significant health problems or reduced reproductive success, they would likely have disappeared over time through natural selection. But they haven't, which suggests that they aren't harmful enough to be selected against. So, they're neutral. They just are. Evolutionary biologist Jay Gould famously called these kinds of features spandrels. That's a term from architecture. The triangular spaces created by arches that aren't part of the original design, but they can be decorated or used for other purposes. Basically, they're byproducts of a larger evolutionary process. Male nipples are a spandrel. It's a fancy way of saying they're a consequence of our shared developmental pathway, not a purposeful adaptation. All right, let's wrap this up with a flourish. So we embarked on a journey today to unravel the mystery of male nipples, and what a trip it was. We started with those super early days of development in the womb, when all embryos begin the same way, nipples included. We then navigated the fascinating world of hormones, testosterone, estrogen, prolactin, and how they shape our bodies, and in the case of males, largely suppress but don't eliminate nipple development. We wandered through the animal kingdom, finding nipples are surprisingly common in male mammals. And finally, we landed on the idea that male nipples aren't really about need, they're more of a historical artifact. A spandrel, if you will, a reminder of our shared evolutionary past. Ultimately, male nipples are a testament to the fact that evolution isn't always about creating perfect, efficient designs. Sometimes things just are because of how development unfolds. It's a beautiful example of the intricacies of biology and just how much can be hidden in plain sight. And a useful reminder to check for any changes, since it's possible to get breast cancer as a man. So, next time someone asks you why men have nipples, you can impress them with your newfound knowledge. You can tell them it's a story of shared beginnings, hormonal influences, and evolutionary quirks. Pretty cool, right? Thank you for watching. Subscribe, comment, and like, and stay curious.